Pete, over to the opposite end of the table with Wolves. They lost big stars this summer that they didn't replace. They lost Mosquera to injury. If they want to stay up in the Premier League, they probably need some reinforcements in January. Who are some of the players they might be looking at?
Yeah, I do think they need reinforcements. They had a decent summer transfer window. I think they brought in 7 new signings, but it's probably the players they lost that they haven't really replaced. I think losing captain and centre back Max Kilman and not really replacing him was a mistake by Wolves. He's been a big omission in that Wolves defence. I think they've conceded the most goals in the Premier League so far this season as well, with 21 goals. So it shows that the defence is a priority where they need to reinforce that. I think they're looking for an experienced centre back if they can bring one in. There was talk that they were interested in Naif Aguerd from West Ham just before deadline day, but he obviously moved elsewhere. And now with the injury to Mosquera, there's been talk of interest in former Newcastle defender Paul Dummett and former Crystal Palace defender James Tompkins, because those two are free agents and would be able to sign outside the transfer window. But I do think Wolves probably, it's hard to judge where they're going to go in the transfers because they've been so hamstrung financially in the last couple of transfer windows that they've had to sell before they can buy. This ended up selling Kilman and Pedro Neto this summer, which were two massive players for Gary O'Neill as well. So it's difficult to replace those players, and I think that's been the case in point so far this season with Wolves' struggles, just picking up 1 point from their opening 7 games. So yeah, I think in January there's no immediate targets of names right now, but I think Gary O'Neill would like to bring in an experienced centre back and maybe a left back as well, because right now Wolves are playing a different formation than they did last season. Normally it was 5-3-2 that they played, but this year they're playing with a back 4, and it's definitely not worked out for Wolves. As I said, conceded so many goals, looking so open, especially in that Brentford game where they conceded 5. They looked all at sea at the back as well. And Ait Nouri, I think, obviously he's been playing at left back, but he's probably better playing as a left wing back where he can get further forward and score goals and create goals as well. So bringing in that experienced centre back, I think, will be a priority for Wolves in the January transfer window, but it will depend on how much transfer funds they've got to spend, because I don't think they will have a lot.
And Paul, obviously Pete mentioned Gary O'Neill a bunch. When do you think we can expect a decision on his future with Wolves? There are reports that Graham Potter and David Moyes are both interested in that Wolves job. Do you think O'Neill gets to the next international break before a final decision is made?
I hope so. I think he's a very, very bright young English coach, and we don't see enough of him. I think there was only a couple of weeks ago there was only 2 English managers that faced each other in the Premier League, and I think Gary O'Neill is a really good young English manager and deserves the backing. I think he's had the rug pulled under him a little bit with the finances at the club, selling Neto, selling Kilman, like Pete said. He's lost 2 key players. But listen, we're in a results business, and his results haven't been good enough, and I think performances haven't been good enough. I think it's the way that Wolves defended, especially at Brentford. The fans showed how disgruntled they were after the game, and they voiced their frustrations towards the manager. But he'll get that. He understands that. I think he said after the game it's one of the worst performances that he's seen from his team. And this week I've never known so much hype and attention in the British media been paid to a set play coach been sacked. They relieved him of his duties this week, whether that was to take a little bit of the heat off Gary O'Neill, whether it was just to allow him to restructure his backroom staff to bring another coach in or whatever. But actually we're in a world with the set play coaches that they are becoming more and more apparent. So Wolves parted companies with theirs this week, whether that's giving Gary O'Neill an opportunity to bring somebody else in, or just to shuffle things up a little bit. But I do personally hope that he does get the time, because he's a bright young English manager. But as I say, results haven't been great, and I think performance is more than results. The likes of Graham Potter, David Moyes, I think you're in a situation almost already with Wolves where you're looking for not a rescue job, but you're looking for somebody to keep them in the league, which is a short-term appointment to keep them in the league. I think a lot of owners and a lot of chairmen now, we see them press the panic button maybe a little bit too early. This first international break has been known for it, but when you look at the teams that are at the bottom, staying in the Premier League is so financially viable and important to these clubs. That's why managers lose their jobs. Getting out of the Championship and getting back into the Premier League, everybody knows how hard it is, and everybody knows that the playoff game is the richest game in the world. Nobody wants to be put in that situation where they have to get out of the Championship and back into the Premier League. So while they're in it, they'll do all they can. Gary O'Neill may be a victim of circumstance with results and performances. I hope he gets given longer. The way that they're playing, the results that they're getting, it's not looking good.
And Pete, Wataru Endo is potentially on the list of players for January for Wolves because he's clearly not in Arne Slot's plans. Could we see him make a move, whether it be a short loan or permanent, to help Wolves stay in the Premier League?
I'd be surprised if Endo was to make that move to Molineux for a couple of reasons. I don't think Liverpool, obviously he's not playing right now, would let him leave unless they have a replacement lined up with so many games ahead for Arne Slot and all his players. He won't want to weaken his squad by letting the player go unless they're bringing in a replacement. And I do think for all Wolves' problems, I think they're quite well stocked in midfield. I don't think midfield is an issue for them. They brought in Andre from Fluminense just before the close of the summer transfer window, and he plays a similar position to Endo, so I don't think it's a priority position for Wolves and Gary O'Neill to make right now as well. And whether Endo would be willing to swap a potential relegation battle to go play in that would again be open to debate as well. So yeah, I don't see anything potentially in that move for Endo, but I'm sure if he was available, I'm sure there'll be a number of clubs who will be looking at the Japan International in January if Liverpool are willing to sanction a loan deal or even a permanent deal for him.